There's a lot going on in schools. I actually fear, we have a saying in this country, don't we, that, everything that starts in America comes to Britain very quickly afterwards. You guys lead the way, we follow, we lap it up. That also, unfortunately, I think means some of the bad stuff. And what's going on in schools with the trans issue is coming our way. It's here, but not quite as extreme, actually, as what you have to put up with. I love, by the way, that you rock up and just take these people head on, just let them expose themselves. I could do hours on that, actually. But should parents be informed, do you think, about what is being taught to their children in schools in terms of sex education material? And should they have to be told if their child goes into school and says, I want to be referred to as a different gender now? Because at the moment, parents don't have to know about that stuff.
So I don't want to mince words here. It's an issue that I care about deeply. Obviously, I've got a third child on the way. I'm 9 months pregnant right now, and my children are going to have to exist within this school system. And we are right now in a custodial dispute with the state over rights over our children, which is bizarre. In fact, I just covered on my show how in certain states they are now kicking parents out. Parents are no longer allowed to see what medical prescriptions are being given to their children once they turn 12 in certain states, right? So your kid has to make a profile and then they can see the doctor one-on-one, and mom and dad are not allowed to be there. So they are trying to pretend that children can make adult decisions at a very young age. And what we have seen in America is what they're doing in the classroom is introducing, you called it sex education. I have to tell you, we cannot call it that, because that is how they are trying to hide this. This is not about education. This is not about sex. This is something much more nefarious that is going on. It is a very dangerous ideology. And what it leads to is death and suicide. Factually speaking, I've had so many detransitioners, as you call it, on my show, people that were given pills. One man who I'd like every person to look up and watch this interview, named Walt Heyer. He is now 80 years old, went through with the bottom surgery. Truly what happened to him was he was molested by his uncle when he was 4. And made to wear a dress while he was being molested. And when he wanted to rinse himself of his identity, rather than a doctor saying, you need a psychologist, they gave him pills and helped him transition. And he went through and got all of the procedures. So you have this incidence of people who are not addressing underlying psychological issues. Some of it is just kids that, in the way that you want to experiment and smoke a cigarette, are like, well, I want to experiment and I want to say that I have a different identity. But what this is being backed by is a big pharma push. They are selling so many new drugs to transition children, something that is an impossibility at the end of the line. Lupron is the name of the drug in the US that they are giving to these children. Lupron is also used to chemically castrate pedophiles in prison. And my biggest fear in all of this is what it's leading to in this push to have children believing that they have the authority to make such a drastic decision at such a young age, is that what's going to come down the pipeline is pedophilia. This is a very serious matter happening in America. The way at the speed at which it has perpetuated, that this is now a front issue, is unbelievable. It can happen overnight in the UK. Let America be a lesson for the UK. You have to deal in reality. And these conversations have to be happening now, because children are being systematically harmed right now in the United States.
By definition, it is entering into conversation the sexualization of children. If you're talking about their gender and you're talking specifically about their genitalia, then that almost normalizes that kind of discussion and conversation, because you hear it everywhere. And then, like you just said, it follows on that you go, well, this 5-year-old knows exactly what they're doing when it comes to gender. And that becomes a paedophile's playground, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And they're already starting to say that there should be different terms. There are professors that are saying we shouldn't call them pedophiles. We should call them minor attracted persons. You can see this at the university level taking place in America, these sorts of people that are popping up. And even though they seem like they're on the fringe, I have said from the beginning that it is so obvious that the next thing that's going to come is pedophilia, because we no longer have the courage to call mental illness. And we are trying to become such a compassionate society that we're compassionate to the point of stupidity. And that's where we have arrived in America. I don't want this to happen in the United Kingdom. So I just want to be very clear here and not mince words. Stop this ideology. It is an evil ideology, and children are being harmed.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it is the very most innocent end of this terrible spectrum, right? I think it is, at the very least, Munchausen by proxy for a lot of these parents who feel like their own lives are pretty dull, who want their child to be special and different and unique, and maybe push that on them. But I don't think they realise, like you've just said there, what's coming down the line. And that in itself is child abuse anyway. Look, I've got one here about J.K. Rowling because she's been trolled on this issue massively. She's been attacked for her defense of these kind of issues, etc. How do you feel about J.K. Rowling and what she's done?
Well, I've forgiven her because I don't want to forget the J.K. Rowling that was very judgmental to conservatives in America who had a little bit of Trump derangement syndrome and didn't realize that the thing about the left is they will always eat their own. So she trumpeted every other issue. And then she finally found one where she wasn't really willing to get in line. And she said, no, actually, I'm a woman. And then the same person that they championed and loved and glorified, they sacked immediately, right? And they were willing to have her canceled and essentially to ruin her because she disagreed on one issue because they're remarkably intolerant. The left is what they are. So there's no room for having a difference in opinions. But I'm very happy she's there. Obviously she's tremendously talented. She has a huge platform and she has stuck by her figurative guns in this capacity, so much so that the story of J.K. Rowling and the treatment of J.K. Rowling is something that can be learned from, And so I am proud of her for doing this. And it has been horrific to watch the self-proclaimed feminists, a la Emma Watson, the person who was made essentially by the wizarding world of Harry Potter, who says to the public that she's a feminist, how quickly she was willing to throw J.K. Rowling under the bus to help men, to help men that say, I'm a woman on the inside, which is it's amazing. All she does is talk about the patriarchy, talk about feminism. And then at the first opportunity that she had to actually be a feminist and to stand by a woman who has done so much for her, she threw her under the bus. And so that kind of gets into the category of the scam of feminism that I often talk about on my platform as well, because it has been rabid feminists that have been pushing this trans ideology. Really, honestly, kudos to J.K. Rowling because it takes bravery. It does take bravery to stand up to the mob and to say something that should be so abundantly obvious. Women are women and men are men, but we are living in a backward society where saying something as abundantly obvious and as abundantly true is difficult. It's difficult to say. People lose their entire careers and their livelihoods. So I'm very proud of the person that she is today because, as I said, this is a most crucial issue that will be at the forefront in the UK very soon, if it isn't already. And you're going to need leaders and people that have a backbone to stand up to it.